This is Zach with Promote Systems, and today we will learn how to do a time-lapse and then an HDR time-lapse with the Promote control. We will be using a Canon 5D Mark III camera and a Promote control updated to the latest firmware. Firmware updates are available free and posted frequently on the Promote Systems and Promote control websites. The time-lapse mode is useful to take a number of pictures separated by a preset time interval with an optional delay before starting the sequence. The resulting pictures can be used to create a fast motion video. The time-lapse mode will use your camera exposure settings. We highly recommend using a compatible shutter cable when using time-lapse mode with intervals shorter than 2 seconds. The Promote control shutter cables are available from the Promote Systems website as well as from our dealers. Another benefit of the shutter cable is you can optionally set your camera to bulb mode and instruct the Promote control to time an arbitrary exposure in the time-lapse mode. First, connect the shutter cable's 3.5mm headphone stereo plug to the Promote control shutter cable port located next to its USB port. Then connect the camera plug to the camera's shutter release port. Make sure the cable is inserted all the way into its port. Just push it firmly but carefully until it's snapped in place. Next, make sure the Promote control knows you are using the shutter cable. Press the left and right buttons simultaneously to enter the Promote control setup menu. Left and right buttons scroll through available settings, while up and down buttons change settings value. Scroll to Use a separate cable for shutter release and set it to Yes. When this setting is enabled, you will need to keep the shutter cable connected when you use your Promote control. To start a time-lapse sequence, perform the following steps. First, switch your Promote control to time-lapse mode by hitting the Mode button. Set your camera to any desired exposure mode other than bulb exposure. Set your camera's exposure parameters as you would for a single shot. We recommend disabling camera autofocus to avoid any interference with the time-lapse intervals. Use the interval setting on the Promote control to specify how often a picture should be taken. The interval is specified in hours, minutes, seconds, and tenths of seconds. Note that your camera may not be able to take images as fast as the interval setting may suggest. The maximum frame rate is determined by the image type and size selected in the camera, memory card speed, presence of shutter cable, and other factors. If your camera cannot keep up with the time-lapse interval you set, some images may be skipped. Next, specify how many frames or images should be taken in total. If you're not sure if you want an unlimited number, you can choose infinite and it won't stop until you tell it to. Use the Start-End setting if you wish to delay the beginning of the time-lapse image sequence. This setting also uses hours, minutes, and seconds format. Press the Start button on the Promote control. If you specified a delay above, a countdown will begin. Otherwise, the Promote control will take the first image and continue with the image sequence as programmed. An optional AC adapter is recommended when performing extremely long time-lapse sequences in order to avoid depleting Promote control batteries before the sequence finishes. However, if your time-lapse is shorter than 20 or 30 hours, a fresh set of alkaline batteries will be sufficient. If you would like to be able to specify arbitrary exposures instead of having your camera take care of exposure speeds, the workflow will take a few more steps. First, set your camera to bulb exposure mode. Then make sure the time-lapse exposure setting mode in the Promote control setup is set to arbitrary bulb mode. As before, use the left and right buttons to enter the Promote control setup menu. The shutter cable is required for this mode. We already have it connected. Now set your desired exposure in hours, minutes, and seconds format. The rest of the time-lapse procedure will be the same as before. Time-lapse mode can optionally be used to create high dynamic range time-lapse sequences. This mode will take several images instead of just one at each time-lapse interval. Every bracketed sequence is merged into an HDR image, and then the series of resulting HDR images is used to create an HDR time-lapse movie. The time-lapse portion of the time-lapse HDR functionality is controlled via time-lapse mode, and the HDR portion is controlled via the high dynamic range mode screen. Use the following workflow to get the most of time-lapse HDR imaging. First, we'll need to connect our camera via USB. This type of connection is required for all work related to high dynamic range imaging. Also, an optional shutter cable is recommended to accelerate HDR sequences and thus reduce the time-lapse interval. In time-lapse mode, specify an interval to wait between HDR bracketed sequences. We recommend using an interval of 2 seconds or more to allow the camera to write down all the images from the previous bracketed sequence. Set frames to the number of HDR series you would like to acquire. Press and hold up or down navigation buttons to accelerate the changes. Here too you can set the number to infinite. In this case, the remote control will keep on taking images until you stop it by holding the power button down. Optionally, use Start In setting to wait before starting the time-lapse HDR sequence. Now switch to High Dynamic Range mode by pressing the Mode button. Set the HDR settings as you would for a single HDR bracketing sequence. Note that the remote control will take multiple HDR bracketed sequences according to the number of frames specified in the time-lapse mode screen. The total number of images taken by the time-lapse HDR technique will be frames of time-lapse multiplied by frames of high dynamic range mode. For example, if you specify 20 frames in the time-lapse mode screen and then request 7 bracketed frames to be taken in the HDR mode screen, the total number of images taken will be 20 times 7, or 140. Using a large memory card is recommended. Now enable the T-Lapse setting. The remote control will display the time-lapse interval that will be used to separate HDR sequences from each other. If you would like to change this interval, return to time-lapse mode screen. You can hold the left navigation button while pressing Mode button to return to the time-lapse mode screen from the high dynamic range mode. Also note that the remote control screen will read HDR/T-Lapse at the top, mentioning the number of bracketed HDR sets that will be taken. If you would like to change that number, return to the time-lapse screen. Now press the Start button to begin. The remote control will display the progress of the sequence. To stop the sequence before it is complete, or if you have used the value of infinite for the frames in the time-lapse mode screen, press and hold the power button. Then confirm the sequence cancellation. The remote control will then return to the mode settings screen and await further instruction. We hope you enjoy shooting time lapses with your remote control, and share your results on our Facebook page.